In this video, we're going to continue and explain in a little bit more detail the steps 4, 5, and 6 of the accounting cycle. So the analogy I like to use in reference to steps 4, 5, and 6 is that step 4, 5, and 6 is similar to writing an essay for an English class. When you're writing an essay for an English class, you go through 3 steps, whether you think about it or not. So the first thing is you write your first draft of your essay. When you sit down and you write the essay for the first time, you don't turn in that essay. That is considered your first draft. So you write the first draft of the essay, and then you make changes or revisions to the essay or to that first draft. So you'll take out some words, you'll add another story, you may take out a story, whatever it is. You may make the sentences more concise. You may replace words that are repeated. So you revise the essay. And then once you finish that revision process, then you create your final draft of the essay, right? And that final draft is the draft that you'll turn into your instructor, or if it's a reading assignment, it's the draft that you would read out loud to the class. So that's the process. The first draft, you make revisions, and then the final draft. Well, that's exactly what happens in steps 4, 5, and 6 of the accounting cycle. So the first thing you have is the unadjusted trial balance, right? The unadjusted trial balance here, this is your first version or your first draft of the financial numbers. It's not the final numbers, but it's after you've entered a whole bunch of journal entries, you have the unadjusted trial balance, and we call that the first draft. You don't submit the first draft of your numbers to the world, right? You keep that first draft and you make adjustments. So after we created the first draft of our numbers, which is the unadjusted trial balance, the next thing we do is we have adjusting entries. And adjusting entries is similar to the revision process of an essay. So just as you would take an essay and you would make changes and you would make revisions, you take the adjusted trial balance and you make changes and you make revisions, right? So what are the changes and what are the revisions that are made? Well, for adjusting entries, there's 2 questions that you asked that drives or governs the changes that you make. So the first thing you do is you look at your unadjusted trial balance and you say, have all revenues been recorded? Any instance where we earned revenue, have we made a journal entry for that? And if the answer is no, then you make additional entries or adjusting entries for that. The second thing is, have all expenses been recorded? And if the answer to that question is no, we haven't recorded all expenses, then you do additional journal entries to record all expenses. So the adjusting entry process is really saying, hey, does this trial balance reflect all the revenues that we actually earned for the period? Does this trial balance reflect all the expenses that we incurred for the period? Because if it doesn't, then our numbers are incorrect and we need to make an adjustment. So again, it's the first draft of our numbers, so it's not going to have all the revenues, it's not going to have all the expenses. So we're going to do adjusting entries to include all the revenues that were earned, include all the expenses that were incurred. And once we finish the revision process, now we create an adjusted trial balance. And that is the final version of the numbers after adjusting entries. It is the version of the numbers that you're ready to share with the world. Why? Because the adjusted trial balance includes all revenues that have been recorded or earned, right? And all expenses that have been incurred. So the adjusted trial balance, and I'm going to write that down, right? Because that's key. The reason we want to share it, because it includes all revenues that were earned and includes all expenses that were incurred. Okay? So this adjusted trial balance, step 6, this is what's used to make the financial statements, because you want to make the financial statements when you have final numbers. Even though in the previous chapter we made financial statements with step 4, you wouldn't do that in the real world. You would wait till you get to step 6, have final numbers, and then you create financial statements. Okay, so that's steps 4 through 6, right? Step 4 is our draft. Then we make revisions to our draft in step 5 by including all revenues and all expenses. And then we have the adjusted trial balance, which represents all the revenues that we earned and all the expenses that we incurred.